All right, all right, all right. Morning, everyone. Welcome back to Bible and Brekkie. We're excited to be here. We got Brian back on, and hope that everyone's doing all right. Brian, how you doing, man? How's this last week been?
It's been good. It's been good. I felt a little bit under the weather. It
Mm-hmm.
was more of like a congestion, like kind of like a huge allergy, I guess.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
um, and back to it, man. Feeling good.
Feeling good, like we should, man. Man, any big news this week, man? That we'll talk about it later on, but that has you happy.
Oh, Messi's happy, so I'm happy, man.
That's it. That's it, man. That's the
That's what it
bottom
comes
line.
down to.
That's the bottom line, and we'll talk about that a little later in terms of why we're happy for Messi. If you haven't been keeping up, the biggest transfer news ever. We'll just put a picture there. Messi going to PSG. Looks so happy, man. Wow. So we're happy for him. Things didn't work out with Barca in the way that they had planned and wanted to, but he seems to be in a better location that really wants him. The players around him want him, and excited to be with the coach and a country, and I think a city too, that are just super passionate for him. As you saw, if you saw videos and pictures of his welcome. So excited for him. I don't know when his first game is, but I'm ready to see him play again. That'll be fun, man. That will be fun. So we'll see. But yeah, we've been going through Hosea. It's been pretty good. We're going to do our last chapters of the book of Hosea. Last week we covered Hosea 11, and we just been going through the story of Hosea and his message from God for the people at that time and how that applies to us today. And so we're going to do chapters 13 and 14 and just follow that. And we've seen how kind of God through Hosea has shared this message for his people, saying, hey, you know, I love you with an unfailing love, but you guys have been unfaithful. You've turned to other gods, and kind of what we talked about, like a court case against the people of God, and Hosea speaking to them and then literally living it out. And here we find the last chapters and the last couple messages here from God to his people. So we'll just start in Hosea 13, and it reads like this, and it says, when Ephraim spoke, people trembled, and he was exalted in Israel, but he became guilty of Baal worship and died. Now they sin more and more, and they make idols for themselves from their silver, cleverly fashioned images, all of them the work of craftsmen. It is said of these people, they offer human sacrifices, they kiss calf idols. Therefore, they will be like the morning mist, like the early dew that disappears, like chaff swirling from a threshing floor, like smoke escaping through a window. I just want to stop here and just kind of highlight something interesting, which is kind of the foolishness of people and how they think that they're doing great things, and they're worshiping. You know, he says they sin more and more, and they make idols. They make idols for themselves from their silver, cleverly fashioned images, all of them the work of craftsmen. And kind of God kind of I think makes fun of this at different points in the Old Testament, where he says these people are kind of foolish, that they think that they are attributing the good things that are happening to them, or they're praying to these things that they have themselves made. And so how does that make any sense, right? When the God you're worshiping is made by you, what does it say about your God? It's not really that powerful and that strong, right? And the foolishness of idols and images. And he's like, look, it looks good, but there's no power in that. And so it's pretty interesting to see how we can do that and fool ourselves into thinking that they're actually the ones that deliver us when we ourselves have made them. It's pretty funny. We don't really have those idols in our modern day and age, but we definitely do that with other things. But it continues, but I have been the Lord your God ever since you came out of Egypt. You shall acknowledge no God but me, no Savior except me. I cared for you in the wilderness, in the land of burning heat. When I fed them, they were satisfied. When they were satisfied, they became proud. Then they forgot me. So I will be like a lion to them, like a leopard. I will lurk by the path, like a bear robbed of her cubs. I will attack them and rip them open. Like a lion, I will devour them. A wild animal will tear them apart. You are destroyed, Israel, because you are against me, against your helper. Where is your king that he may save you? Where are your rulers in all your towns, of whom you said, give me a king and princess? Or princesses. And so in my anger, I gave you a king, and in my wrath, I took him away. The guilt of Ephraim is stored up. His sins are kept on record. Pains as of a woman in childbirth come to him, but he is a child without wisdom. When the time arrives, he doesn't have the sense to come out of the womb. This is pretty funny. A dumb baby. I will deliver this people from the power of the grave. I will redeem them from death. Where, O death, are your plagues? Where, O grave, is your destruction? I will have no compassion, even though he thrives among his brothers. An east wind from the Lord will come, blowing in from the desert. His spring will fail, and his well dry up. His storehouse will be plundered of all its treasures. The people of Samaria must bear their guilt, because they have rebelled against their God. They will fall by the sword. Their little ones will be dashed to the ground. Their pregnant women will be ripped open. Kind of crazy ending there. They will be ripped open. Very graphic. Any words there? I mean, any words of hope and comfort?
Hope and comfort, not so much. I guess for hope and comfort is that, you know, what God said, you know, he would do, he does. And so unfortunately in this case it was something a little bit unpleasant for the people. Yeah, I don't know where to start. I feel like it's all kind of just like negative towards, you know, the reader who's reading this is probably like starting to sweat a little bit.
Yeah, definitely.
As they're hearing this, or however it is that they got this message, is definitely sweating a little bit. You know, like when you're nervous and your butt starts to sweat. I feel like that's how they're probably
that's what they're feeling right now. Yeah. Oh my.
Severe discomfort. That's what they're feeling as
they're
they're
just trying
to. No, I do want to go back to like this whole sense of like them worshiping idols and offering sacrifices, right, of their children. We spoke about like what he says in verse 3. There'll be like the morning mist, like early dew that disappears. That's been said like in another chapter before, where he's talking about the same like doom, right?
Right.
But then he adds a little more illustration here.
Kind of turns it. Yep.
And the last illustration he gives is like smoke escaping through a window. And I don't know what image comes to your mind. I guess I think a little bit dark, I guess. I don't know. But I think of something's on fire, you know?
Yeah.
Something's on fire. And in this case, it's not like good. It's not like, oh, you're on fire for Jesus. You know, it's more like you've set your house on fire because of what you've been doing, you know? And so in a way, you've set your family, like you set up your family for failure. In other terms, I feel it's like what God is saying here, not as sacrifices to me, not like as living sacrifices that Paul talks about later, but
right.
You set yourselves on fire against me, right? As you engaged in sacrifices to these other idols, you burned yourself away, kind of like I don't know. And typically, like that smoke, it probably smells like something burning, like it's burnt, right?
Right.
Toast or something like that. And that wasn't really what was supposed to happen, at least like in the temple, right?
Right.
So typically, you'd have a sacrifice, but you'd also have like the altar of incense, right? And you're trying to kind of die down all that nasty, like flesh burning smoke, right? That smell with the incense, which it did. So like leaving the temple after your sacrifice, what you actually smelled was like this beautiful incense. You're like, wow, my sins are forgiven. This is awesome, right? In this case, there doesn't seem to be a supply of anything that kind of masks this burning like smoke.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
it just makes
That's
me think of
interesting.
like when you get invited to somebody's house, right?
Yeah.
And they burn whatever it is that they're cooking. Are you gonna want to eat it?
No, no.
No, bro, I don't want to. I don't want to eat that unless
Yeah.
it's like I don't know. No, most people will be like, "Dang, why did I come here? I should have, I should have either ate before I got here, or shouldn't
Mm-hmm.
have accepted this invitation at all because this person can't cook."
Mm-hmm.
And in their worship for idols, and I think in our worship for certain things, or putting things, above God, or considering them to be better than God, we also kind of give off this like burnt scent to
Yeah.
people,
Yeah.
of like
Yeah.
this fakeness
Mm-hmm.
to us, that is like, oh, I'm
Interesting.
Christian,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I don't really I don't give myself as a sacrifice to God. I
Yeah.
actually
Yeah.
spent all my time and my money and resources, um, and my actual love is towards something else, or someone else. And I feel like we give off that same odor of something burning,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That doesn't is not appealing to people. It's definitely not appealing to young people.
That's good. That's good. Bro, that's a really good. I mean, it kind of goes with what Paul says right in the New Testament of just like when he says like we're a sweet aroma to people, and just we kind of carry the aroma of God. And so, for those that kind of believe and are inclined to that, it's a sweet aroma. But for those that are against it, it's like the smell of death or something. So it's kind of interesting. How you're saying, right? That's that idea of that smoke and it brought about ourselves. And I think it's something that really goes along with what Hosea is saying. Like a lot of the things that you're doing, you've brought against yourself, right? And we kind of read it and we're like, oh, God is so evil. I mean, look at it, ripping babies out of mothers, and it's like that's not what God. He's just saying that this is what's going to come because you've broken relationship with me, and it's kind of like the prodigal son in a sense. And obviously, we know here it's more of like an intimate, marital relationship that God is comparing. But it's like if you put yourself away from like your father who has all the inheritance and everything in your house, then you're no better, as in the prodigal son, than a hired servant in a foreign land. It's like you lost out on everything. And so God's like, hey, if you continue down this path, it's going to lead in this direction, and it's going to be horrible.
Yeah, I mean, if you read through history, and
Yeah.
you read through scripture and things like that, you quickly come to terms with the fact like that Israel is a really small nation
Yep.
in the middle of great like world powers of its day
Powerful. Yeah.
that are way stronger than they are. I mean, you see it today too. Um, it's like I guess it's like today if the U.S. were to say, "All right, Israel, you're by yourself," like the nation of
Yeah.
Israel,
Yeah. Yeah.
you're on your own. Like Iran and all these other countries, Jordan, boom, like Israel's out. So I think like in a way, what God is saying here
Mm-hmm.
uh, is that, dude, you've messed up.
Yeah.
I've chased after you continually. I kind of hear myself now a little bit. I don't know if you
I'll
changed
mute.
it. Is it me?
Can you hear yourself still? Talk. I'm gonna mute
Um,
myself.
no, I mean I can't hear myself when you're muted, but I don't know if maybe you might have clicked on something. No,
No, no. I
that's
think
so weird.
I sometimes I hear myself a little bit, that I haven't yet, but
Oh, okay. Oh, I don't hear myself anymore. All
okay.
right, cool. So that was a little technical difficulty. Anyway, my bad. Um, so yeah, I mean, I agree with your point. The fact that God's like, yo, I've been chasing after you this whole time, and you haven't reciprocated my love in any sort of way. You haven't even accepted the fact that I love you, and that I'm gifting to you all that you have, and so he's like, all right, like this is toxic. I need to take a break. I'm gonna cut this. And so once he does that, obviously, all the nations around Israel are going to come for it. Um, and during David and Solomon's reign, like when you really look into all that, historic stuff, you see that Israel was a superpower, like that other nations would come and get advice and pay tribute to a
Mm-hmm.
really
Mm-hmm.
small country, um, was something like wow, and And so it was a world power during that kingdom or whatnot,
Mm-hmm.
and yet being so small. And so you could see how God was the one who was constantly interfering on their
Yep.
behalf,
Yep. Yep.
so that they could show like, hey, it doesn't matter like how big, how small, how many resources, all this other stuff. Like
Mm-hmm.
our capital's on a mountain, like what grows on top of that mountain. And so it was just to show like how being with God was better than, worshiping all these different
Right.
idols and
Right.
stuff like
Right.
that. And they're like, nah, we're gonna go to these other idols who had given
Yeah.
us nothing, but we prefer them over you. So that's tough. So God's
Yeah.
like, all
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And so he's not gonna rip these, pregnant bellies open like with a knife or anything like that. What's gonna happen is like the foreign countries that are gonna come and attack you because
Mm-hmm.
you lack my protection
Yeah.
are gonna do that to you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Dude, that's yeah, man. It's kind of, it's hard. I think it's important to contextualize it and see like that. But yeah, I mean, yeah, there was nothing special about Israel in terms of anything, right? And it was, the whole idea was that God's like, hey, I'm going to show that in a really bad place, like you're saying, I can provide these amazing things, and in that blessing, they lose the blesser, the giver, and choose to make things images and attribute what God does for them, and it's crazy to see that. But it's interesting. There is, you continue down in verses 5 and 6. I cared for you in the wilderness, going back to that idea of the Exodus and in the land of burning heat. We know he provided a cloud over by night, by day, and a pillar of fire by night. I fed them, they were satisfied. And this is what happens usually, right? When they were satisfied, they became proud, and then they forgot me. And it's kind of like the cycle that we see all throughout history of just, the hard part of like, I don't even know what you would say, but yeah, it's just like, when you receive his blessings, you get satisfied, you become proud, you say, look at me, look at us, and you forget God. And then in the judges, that happens all the time, where they forget God, and then a power comes and God has to send judges to help them. And then they turn to God, they say, we're sorry. And God's like, all right, I forgive you. Let's do it again. And it's kind of like what's happening with Hosea, right? Where he goes out, marries this woman, Gomer, and then she leaves and goes with someone else.
Right.
And then he goes and gets her again. And it's just like, it's like what God is doing on and on. And you can imagine if you're married in a relationship and your girl is unfaithful continually, for many of us, that one time that she does that, that would be it. That's it. I'm done. You cancel the relationship with every right. You have every right to step away because, hey, you cheated on me. You weren't faithful. You didn't keep your part of the covenant. And yet God in his mercy, and I think for many of us, it's kind of looks like foolishness, right? He just keeps coming back, and you're like, God, what are you doing? Like, why are you so faithful when they're not faithful to you? And it's a beautiful picture of God. It is one that kind of causes you to pause, I think, a little bit, because you're like, man, that's how much hurt can you take, right? When we talk to our friends that ask us for relationship advice, and if this was their situation, many of us would be like, man, what are you doing going back to this person over and over again?
Yeah. You kind of see how, at least in Hosea's story, every time
Mhm.
that he has to get his wife again, it requires more resources, right? And so the first time was just like, all right, let's get married. Cool. The second time it's like, all right, I need to buy you out of this, and every time after that, it seems like there are more resources that Hosea has to um, invest. I don't know if invest is even the right word, because you would get something back from an investment,
Mhm.
but there's more resources that he has to give to have her. And
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
I feel like for God it was the same way. After the fall, you had, all right, I'm gonna pick another man, right?
Yeah.
And I'm gonna invest in him.
Mhm.
All right, well, that didn't work out. All right, so I'm gonna pick a family, right? I'm gonna
Right,
pick
right, right.
Abraham and his whole family,
Mhm.
and you invest in the whole family. It's like, dang, that didn't work out. All right, I'm gonna pick a nation,
Oh my
you
goodness.
know,
Yeah, you're like,
and
hopefully a whole nation with many people.
yeah, at
Yeah.
least one, right, would be loyal. And so he invests in a whole nation, and none of these things really work out. And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
there's nothing else that he could probably give except for like Jesus, right? And
Mm-hmm,
so it's
mm-hmm.
like,
For
well,
himself.
here's
Yeah.
like the fullness of everything that I have. And I can't give any more than this.
Right, right, right.
So the ball's in our court. Either you
Mm-hmm.
accept me or deny me, but I can't give any more.
Yeah.
It's literally impossible for him to give more than Jesus, you know?
Mm-hmm. Oh man, no, you're good. You're good. But yeah, man, that I like that. I like that idea. Um, that's powerful, man. It just kind of it causes you to just, man, how, and I think it's really easy, and I think it's something that Israel did too, and we see it in the day of Jesus to kind of forget how merciful God's been with you, and you get frustrated, kind of like that. The parable, and we've talked about it before, of just the workers that come at different times. And then
Yeah.
at the end of the day, they all get paid the same thing. And God's like, hey, I mean, are you the guy with the fields? Because he's gonna do whatever he wants because it's his field and his work, and he can. And for many of us, it would be like, come, that's not fair, God. I mean, I've been here, I've been faithful, kind of like the prodigal son's brother. At home, he's upset. I never left. And it's so easy to forget that the same grace that is extended to others is the grace that's given to us daily and all the time. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, man.
No, I
It's,
think
it's
the
powerful.
guys that got picked up first would probably start a union, right? And be like, yo,
Yeah.
what the heck? Um, yeah, I think that sums it up pretty well.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, by Hosea's time and when he's writing this and the people that he's writing this,
Mm-hmm.
God has given ample grace and
Yep.
opportunity.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. No, he definitely has. And he exemplifies that when he comes in person, right? But in this context here, he's trying to awaken them to their situation, how it's leading them to death, right? And how he, even here, continue verse 10. It's pretty funny, right? He kind of goes back to that point when the people come to him and say, we want a king like all the other kings, right? In verse 10.
Yeah. Verse
And he's
11
like,
is powerful, bro.
yeah, and he's like, yo, I mean, you don't know what you're asking for. No, we want a king to be like the other nations. And he's like, I'm your king. It's really an affront to them, to God, because he was their ruler and king and leader. And they really didn't need anything, but they just kept looking at what other people had, and they're like, we want that. And verse 10, where's your king that that he may save you? I mean, go get your king, right? Or where are your rulers in all your towns of whom you said, give me a king and princesses? And then, so verse 11, like you said, so in my anger, I gave you a king, and in my wrath, I took him away. Why do you think that? What was that? Yeah, I was trying to think that too. What is that? I wonder what other versions say. In my anger, I gave you a king, and in my wrath, I took him away.
I don't really no, I haven't looked at the Hebrew or anything like that. Just
Right.
just from what we're reading, I'm going to talk. All right. So
yeah, go ahead. Yeah, dude.
yeah, bear with me. So, I mean, all I can think of is that the people in asking for this hurt God deeply. And I don't know if you've ever been like deeply hurt by someone that you love. It's not just pain that you feel, it's anger.
Yeah.
It's not just disappointment, it's a little bit of anger. And I think that anger kind of drove him to pick a king that the people wanted. He's like, all right, what's the list? What's the list of qualities that you guys want in a king? So he probably, surveyed all the nations, saw all their kings, and then went back to Israel, looked at what they wanted, and was like, all right, you want a king that's tall, that's beautiful, that's commanding, that his presence is like, wow, all right, someone to look up to, a leader per se. You want all these external qualities, but you don't care about his character. You don't care about what's in his heart. And so he picks Saul. Like in his anger, in his hurt, and his disappointment, I think he picked Saul. And Samuel went and did the whole thing, and Saul became king, and people were happy for a little bit, and Saul was good for a little bit. But even Saul didn't have really a relationship with God. His relationship was with Samuel,
Mm-hmm.
and
Right.
it wasn't like, oh, let me pray to God. It was more like, hey, Samuel, can you pray to God about this?
Yeah. It was
Um,
he was the his
yeah.
mediator kind of thing.
And so in his wrath, when I think about like wrath, I think, I don't think about like this anger that comes out of a place of hurt. I think of wrath that comes out of like a place of um he needs to make things right.
Mm-hmm.
Like you wrath comes when God is like, I feel, exercising judgment on the people who have hurt other people, who have
Yeah.
imprisoned other
Yeah.
people,
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
on the what's the word for that, on the oppressor,
Yeah.
you know
It's
and
yeah.
so I
Oppressive.
feel like that's why it mentions like, in my wrath I took him away, because
Hmm.
maybe he was oppressing the people just like any other king would be like, oh, I need the best of everything.
Mm-hmm.
But also he was oppressing the people spiritually, I think,
Mm-hmm.
and just guiding them astray from the get-go with that
Yeah.
war,
Yeah.
and, oh, I'm the priest now, and all that stuff that he does,
Mm-hmm.
right? You can read
Mm-hmm.
about that later. And so at least that's the kind of like the way that I would explain that, is that in his anger, yeah, he went out, he chose Saul, but in his wrath, like, seeing the oppressor that he had become, he's
Hmm.
like, I'm taking him away
That's
and
good.
giving you someone with like
Mm-hmm.
that. What matters is what's in his heart,
Yeah.
not necessarily what he does and how he goes
Right.
about it. Or yeah.
Dude, that's powerful because going back to that, just that idea of just how they picked up, Saul's described, right, tall, handsome, his hair, like they're like, yeah, he's just good looking, all external. And then what kind of thing we always talk about David, that even though he failed a lot, but he was a man after God's own heart. Like he had kind of the, a desire to follow after God, and that's kind of the difference maker there. That even when he was wrong, he could always turn to God, and he was just, hey, I've sinned, I've gone wrong. Psalm 51. After everything happens with Bathsheba and Uriah. But yeah, man, it's powerful. And just again, the reminder in that whole situation where we just don't know what's best for us. And I think a lot of people that have come to kind of submit and say, God, all right, I lived my life trying to follow my own way. We get to that point where we're like, man, I could get what I wanted before, but it never brought what I desired, right? Which is, fulfillment or joy, satisfaction. And when I did my things my way, as Frank Sinatra would say, it always ended up bad. And here we're seeing that with Israel, and it's played over and over and over again. I mean, if you watched Loki, it's as if it's almost as if it's happened so much. It almost seems as if God has been jumping into different universes or multiverses, right? And just like every universe he's in, he's like, all right, hope maybe this universe will be different. And it's the same thing that happens over. And yet it's always the same story, man. I mean, and so from the beginning, like you said, right, from Adam and Eve, and then Abraham and Jacob, and he goes to Israel, and he's like, all right, I got to do this myself. Like, but I do like that idea of that anger. I think his righteous anger, which is like, especially knowing what he knows. And I think that's kind of what you think as a parent, maybe as a leader too, when you've experienced some stuff and you see people going a direction, you're like, I know that this is going to lead you to heartbreak, but sometimes you have to go through it to experience it. I can't choose for you or live for you, but I think in his anger I gave you a king, and in my wrath I took him away. And it could be just similar into like, hey, like you said, right? I'm already upset because, one, you don't trust that I can be your leader, and then I'm upset that the leader that you wanted and that was given to you, and that that was brought to yours, they've caused harm to people. They've kind of the main issue with the Old Testament in social justice was the oppression that you were saying, right, against the poor, the least fortunate, the outcast. And here he's upset and saying, man, that's it, I'm out, I'm done with this. I can't do this.
The whole point was for them not to have a king because of those things, right? They'll take the best of your field, they'll take the best of your harvest, they'll take the best of not just your land, but your daughters. And so he'll take your men into war. God said all this thing to the people, right? And they still wanted a king. So you read a verse on here that was earlier, and I don't remember where. Sorry,
Or what?
let me find it.
No, you're
Okay.
good. When I fed them, they were satisfied.
Yeah, that verse.
Verse 6. Verse 6. Yeah.
Yeah, dude. I think that this is a powerful lesson. Like when I fed them, they were satisfied. When they were satisfied, they became proud and they forgot me. It's like,
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
do you reach a point where you're satisfied? When you're like completely satisfied? You know, how do you put a bar or some kind of boundary on what God can give you, right? And so, um, it's impactful, at least to me, when you read that, because I was like, yo, why didn't they ask for more, you know? And so past, like they looked at their past and they maybe heard through the stories what what they had in Egypt and how it was better now, and they were completely satisfied with what they had now, and they didn't see how this could be better. They could only see how this could either stay the same or improve based on like their own alliances and their own decisions and their own things. And so I think that we do that. I do that all the time, with God, where I'm like satisfied. I'm like, wow, I had such a good devotional this morning. God, I felt like you spoke to me through this passage, blah, 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 blah. Right. I pray. I'm like, yo, God, take all this, solve it however you can, take all my mistakes, whatever. Right. And that's it. All right, cool. I go the day like satisfied, but I never really go and ask for more. There's got to be more
Yep.
than
Yep.
simply reading a text and thinking about it for a while. There's got to be more than just. And so I think we don't really look at that. We just say, okay, what's worked in the past? How have
Yeah.
people felt
Yeah.
spiritual in the past? And let me just do the same. And if
Yeah.
that works out for me, I'm satisfied.
I'm satisfied. I'm good. Yeah. And that's what's crazy too. We get so satisfied with just the bar minimum, right? With not even all that God wants to give, and He's obviously wanting to be good. And we're like, all right, I'm good with that, and I'll do the rest. And He's like, no, I want to give. I want you to have no, like He says, right? A life and to have a life that is an abundant life, right? Not just to
Yeah.
have just a.
We're not preaching like prosperity gospel or
Yeah,
anything like that,
It's
but
like claim it, and it'll be yours. Yeah, but it is very interesting how we it reminds me of, I think even it applies to Gomer too, of the quote that says you receive the love, you accept the love that you think you deserve. And it's like, when you think you don't deserve more, or when you think maybe that you can work for the rest and you'll just take a little bit, then that's all you're going to take. And it's interesting that we fool ourselves into living mediocre lives when God's like, yeah, I mean, and I think it goes back to like our perception, right? Devil comes in through a serpent, tells Adam and Eve, I mean, why can't you eat that one? And in reality, if you look at it, we focus on that one, but it's like you had thousands upon thousands of other fruits and things you could eat, and they focus on that one, and they're like, oh man, we're so and same thing, I think, with our lives. We just look at that, and we're like, oh man, okay, I'll just do it. And God's like, I want to give you so much more than what you can imagine or even think about. But you sell yourself short because you either turn to other idols, as these people did, or you turn to your kings, and you don't turn to me, who is the one that is loving you and always there for you. And you're cutting yourself short. So yeah, man, it's a painful reality, but I think it's a reminder to all of us of how that happens to us. And yeah, man. And then I think it's funny there, continuing right after he says, "So my anger I give you keen, and my wrath I took him away." And then in verse 13, right? I'm just gonna put it because I think it's really funny. It says, "Pains as of a woman in childbirth come to him, but he is a child without wisdom." Right? So he's a dumb child. And when the time arrives for him he doesn't have the sense to come out of the womb, right? So she's just kind of showing like, man, you're foolish, man. Like when the baby just doesn't know to come out of the womb when it's time to come out. It's a dumb child. I think as God is processing what He sees, He's just, my people are just literally foolish and dumb, right? They don't get. It's kind of like a dog returning to its vomit type of thing, where a dog goes and he just goes back and forth with the things that don't work, and you're like, what are you doing? You're so dumb. That's literally your vomit. Like you something didn't cause your stomach to sit well, so you vomited it out, and now you're going back to that same thing to ingest it again and go through it again. It's just like there's just no. It just doesn't make any sense. And God's kind of having to deal with people like that on the daily of just, oh my god. I'm sure the angels just scratch their heads and they're like, "What again, Brian?
Yeah.
Is this?"
Yeah, I mean, childbirth is like a natural process where
Mhm.
kind of like the child moves into like that direction to be ready to come out of the womb.
Yeah,
Uh, but I don't feel like it's a decision of the child who's like, oh, I
that's
think
true. That's
I'm
true.
fully developed now. Let me turn
Let
my
me
head to where
push
it's
out
like
and just
the
yeah.
the canal that I'm supposed to be coming out of, and I'll be ready to go. Right,
Yeah,
whenever you
yeah.
want, mom. 3, 2, 1, push,
Let's do
and
it. Yeah, yeah.
I'll be pulling myself out too. No, like that. None of that happens, and so it's just
Mhm.
like a natural thing. The mom is the one who's pushing, going through all the pain, right? And the kid is just crying because he's like, "Yo, you're taking me out of this womb." Sorry, and in a way, um, God is saying like, dude, like I gave you everything
Yep.
in the womb,
Mhm.
right? Um, I've always wanted you to like grow, to have everything that you need, but to grow. And when it comes time for you to grow, you're like, oh, I can do it myself. And
Right.
it's like, dude, no, you can't. Like not even birth is comes down to it being your choice, and so um I think that many times we act like that, like newborn baby who thinks like we can make decisions that um where can impact our lives in like the positive way, or we can do something for the sake of like salvation or whatever. And God's like, nah, bro, you're like this unborn child that's
Yeah.
being birthed,
Yeah.
and you have no say in the matter,
Right. Right. That's a good
nor
point.
any
That's a good
work
point.
for you to do.
That's a great point.
That I've been feeding you this whole time. And I mean, let's see how long you survive without my breastfeeding.
Yeah. That's true. That's so good. Yeah, and it's just kind of the idea, where we're just reacting to God's actions and stuff. And he talks about this in chapter 11 too, of just, hey, I'm the one, when you were a child, I called you, I raised you up, I taught you how to walk, I carried you, and I healed you and did all this, and then you didn't realize that it was me that did this. And here you go, turning to other things and other powers, right, other nations to try to get help, and it's like, y'all just need to realize that it's me who is providing all this for you, and it's not you or your own effort or work.
Yeah, man. It's been I think it's been proven a few times that children need human contact in order to
Yep.
survive. It's not just food.
Mm-hmm.
It's like they need actual like their mom or dad or whatever, the nurse,
Right.
to have that human contact that can help them to start walking and all those things.
Mm-hmm.
And how foolish it would be for your child to grow up and be like, oh yeah, I did all that myself.
Yeah. It's like,
It's like, hold on, bro. Like I
whoa.
invested so much. Like I'm still paying like that hospital bill where
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
your mom had to give birth to you.
I
You know
taught
what I'm saying?
myself how to walk. And it's like, what? No, you didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's how foolish it
Mm-hmm.
sounds, like
Mm-hmm.
what Israel's kind of like doing to God. And God's like, yo, you're not making any sense.
Yeah. Yeah, you're pretty dumb. But in the midst of that, right, going to verse 14, there's still a beautiful promise.
Chapter
In the
14.
No, well, I just want to read this verse 14 and then
Verse
we'll jump it.
14?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
But just verse 14 of 13. And I'll highlight it here just because it's I think it's something I believe, and I haven't double checked it, but I think it's I think it's something that is that
It's
thunder?
raining. Yeah,
Oh,
it's
I was
raining
like,
over
I thought it
here.
was you
Too, so.
breathing. It kind of sounds like you breathing hard, but
Yeah, no.
is
I
it?
am a little stuck. Let me see if I can move my camera. I mean,
Is it raining hard, or is it thundering and lightning?
hopefully my HDMI cord doesn't come off. Yeah. So you
Oh
probably
wow!
can't see
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
But it's raining kind of hard out there. Yeah.
Is that we have a hurricane coming, don't we?
Yeah. It's not a hurricane now. I think it's just
Tropical storm.
yeah.
I haven't really kept up. You got to
Not
tell me.
even. I think it's just like a depression, a tropical depression.
Why do they call it depression? That's an interesting depression. Is it
His name is
depression?
Fred. Its name is Fred.
Fred. Why is it called tropical depression?
Because it's not a
Because of the
tropical
pressure.
storm yet.
But is it? But why depression? Is it because the storm? The pressure.
I
I don't
have no
know.
idea.
It's a low pressure system. Oh, okay, of thunderclouds. So I guess it's a low, whatever. All right, but verse 14, and then we'll jump to chapter 14 real quick. But in the midst of this, you're just dumb and all that. I will deliver this people from the power of the grave. I will redeem them from death. Where, O death, are your plagues? Where, O grave, is your destruction? And I think it's something that Paul draws from in Second Corinthians when he says,
Yeah, I was like, dude, what the heck?
it
Like,
sounds just like it. Yeah, if you look at First Corinthians 15, right, when he's talking about the dead. I think it's that one, right? The dead in Christ shall rise, and he goes on this, and I'm gonna just double check it.
yeah, something like where or death is your sting or something.
Yes,
like that.
yeah. Where, O death, is your sting, and
We know all these verses by memory.
yeah.
It's just that right now, it's
Yeah, that's the verse that we use a lot in funerals and just in the hope, right? In the flash, twinkling of an eye, the trumpet sound, the dead in Christ will rise, and the imperishable. And then death has been swallowed up by victory. Where, O death, is your victory? Where, death, is your sting? Let me look at.
that's the
Oh
one.
yeah, it's quoted from here. Yeah, where, O death, is your victory? Where, death, is your sting? And so it's that beautiful promise there in the midst of that in the midst of that, he's like, hey, you may face death in what's coming for you in this exile and the nations that are coming to take you, but death doesn't have the final say, and there will be restoration, which is what chapter 14 kind of speaks to. And we'll just read it real quickly here. Chapter 14, the last plea from Hosea for God, for his people. And it says, return Israel to the Lord your God, right? If anything, if this message hasn't done anything but this, hopefully this is what the response is. Return. Your sins have been your downfall, right? Clearly, as we've been talking. Take words with you and return to the Lord. Like come back. Say to him, forgive all our sins and receive us graciously, that we may offer the fruit of our lips. Assyria cannot save us. We will not mount war horses. We can't fight what's coming. We will never say our gods to what our own hands have made. For you and the fatherless find compassion, right? That foolishness, our gods, for what our hands have made, right? I will heal their waywardness, God says, and I will love them freely, and for my anger has turned away from them. I will be like the dew to Israel, which is interesting because he's compared Israel to dew that vanishes in the morning, right? But here it's the dew that actually stays because he will blossom like a lily. It stays to nurture and water what is actually there. Like a cedar of Lebanon, he will send down his roots. His young shoots will grow. The splendor will be like an olive tree, his fragrance like a cedar of Lebanon. People will dwell again in his shade. They will flourish like the grain. They will blossom like the vine. Israel's fame will be like the wine of Lebanon. Ephraim, what more have I to do with idols? I will answer him and care for him. I am like a flourishing juniper. Your fruitfulness comes from me. Who is wise? He finishes the book. Let them realize these things. Who is discerning? Let them understand, right? Kind of like how Jesus finishes his Sermon on the Mount with the wise man that built his house on the rocks. And he said, like, if you're, whoever listens to this is wise. If you don't, foolish. The ways of the Lord are right. The righteous walk in them, but the rebellious stumble in them. So powerful way to end the book here. Hosea making that appeal to say, hey, let's just turn back to God, man. What's coming is coming because of our actions, and we're going to have to pay for the consequences. But we have a God that is able to redeem and reveal. And in verse 4, right, I'm going to heal their waywardness. I'm going to love them freely. And my anger has turned away from them. So exciting to be able to see that we have a God that is willing to restore and have compassion in the end. And it seems like a lot of these times with the messages of these Old Testament books, there's always that appeal at the end, right? There's going to be a group that's going to turn back. There's going to be a group, and I want to be able to heal and bring forgiveness and restore, because that's the core of it. That's what God desires, right? He's a giver. He's a lover. He wants to be in good relationship. He wants to allow us to flourish and to do well. But just like any parent that tries to teach his kids, God has to allow things to happen for us to learn, hey, that's not how life works and is. But yeah, any thoughts here on chapter 14, Ryan?
I think that when many relationships break, if there is a party that wants back or the party that hurt and wants back in,
Mm.
most of the time the excuse is, what would I say to them?
Mm.
You know? What could I say to make things better, to go back to the way things were?
Wow.
What could
Yeah.
I possibly do or say? And it it seems like God is like, listen, dude, if you want back, like, this is what you need to say. Like, this is it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of stuck on verse 3 where it says Assyria cannot save us. And so
Mm-hmm.
part of it is, all right, you say that, but also as you're saying that, don't turn around and send, you know, some kind of diplomat to Assyria for help. You know, it's like, say that and then come to the temple, worship me, and yeah, I'm gonna come through. That's what it seems like. That's what it seems like God wants. And in a way, I don't know what would have happened. Sorry, I don't know what would have happened if they would have done that, because they didn't do that, right? So I don't know if he would have been like, all right, I'm back in it, and like the rest of the Bible would have been maybe a little bit different. I don't know. But to know that God would be willing to be like, all right, it's forgotten, let's do this, is something, worth worth placing our hope in. You know what I'm saying? So um in a way, after he says like all this gruesome stuff, right, about women being ripped open, he's like, return, you know uh and it's not like guilting them into doing so. It's more or less, I don't know, this is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
It could happen now in your lifetime or later,
Mm-hmm.
but to prevent you or your children from going from this,
Yeah.
like,
It's like a lover's last plea, right? It's like, just please,
yeah,
like at that, and you kind of see his heart throughout Hosea from the beginning of just the decision of loving a woman that is promiscuous like that. And at the end, it's kind of like what Hosea had to do with Gomer, right? Literally go and purchase her from a auction place or wherever it was that he went to buy her. And he's like, just please, just stay with me. Like, just come back. We'll work this out. Just trust me. I'll help lead you in what it looks like to be restored and reconciled. And it's just a hurting God that is trying to do the best for us, and we just keep going our own way. Well, like you said, trusting other places and other powers as they did with Assyria. And he's like, no, stop doing that. Hosea says, just return. Your sins have brought this upon you. Bring your words, return to God, and ask him to say, forgive us all our sins, receive us graciously, that we may offer the fruit of our lips. Like that, what we say may actually be what our hearts are really saying, which is that we're sorry, we're tired, we want to come back. And the beautiful thing here is that God's willing to welcome us back, but it requires us, turning and coming to Him.
yeah.
But yeah,
Why does he mention Lebanon so much?
it's
Like
a
in verse
beautiful place.
5,
Yeah,
he mentions
yeah.
it. Verse 6,
I
verse
think it was just
8.
they have a lot of nice trees and stuff, and so because I know if I'm not mistaken, Solomon got some of his trees and I think it's a very foresty area, and so it's known for the trees. So that's why like the
It's like
cedar of Lebanon,
trees.
and then the
It's
wine.
like the scent, or I mean fragrance, the wine. Like they got all this good stuff in Lebanon
Yeah, man,
apparently,
Lebanon's
right?
the place, man. Lebanon's the
And God's like, yo, you know how Lebanon is like the best thing ever? Well, I
I
could
can do you one
give it
better.
for you. Because he says there, he's like, Israel's fame will be like the wine of Lebanon. Apparently,
Mhm.
that wine was famous. Like everybody knew about it. That was like the wine to get.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, you know how PSG have a stacked team now,
Uh-oh.
and everybody's into them. Yeah, well,
Yeah, my team is better.
that's gonna be your church. It's like, oh, snap.
Yo, that's true. That's true. That's good, man. Yeah, everything's stacked in your favor, man. You're on a stacked team. But yeah, it's interesting, right? I mean, we're kind of far removed from that. in terms of understanding contextually that. But yeah, I think that's a good illustration of is your church's fame will be like that of the team of PSG.
When
Wow. But a beautiful reminder at the end of the day, the last words that sometimes we have in our relationships with humans, it's very negative. It's in a dark note. It's a sad note. You hurt me. That's it. And that's it. But for God, there's always this appeal at the end for mercy, for compassion, for grace. We don't, we always know how the story continues and the people continue in their ways. They go into exile after exile, finally ending up in Babylon, where we get Daniel and the likes. But at least we know that the constant thing, just like us, our foolishness is constant and turning from God. So is His grace and kindness towards us.
it's interesting that you mentioned Daniel and stuff, because basically, the whole like prophecy and stuff about like, all right, from the moment you turn back 70 years or whatever the heck.
Right.
Like here, when he says return Israel to the Lord your God, is he appealing like to the whole nation, or to at least like one guy to come forward and say like, God, on behalf of this nation, we're sorry.
Right. Kind of like what Hosea does, and Daniel does that too in his prayer. Yeah.
Like, was there even one person that was willing to turn? I'm just wondering here, how bleak was like
it?
their actual situation? How bad was it that God was like, all right, it honestly can't get worse than this. Jesus, you need to go, man. You need to go do this.
And it's kind of like Abraham, right? Where Abraham's praying for Lot in Sodom and Gomorrah, and he's like, if there's 100, and God's like, yeah, I'll spare it. 50, and he gets down to like 10 or 5 or whatever, and God's like, yeah, I'll spare it. And it just shows, and it kind of even with Noah too, where it's like the Bible's like Noah was the only righteous person in all the earth, and so yeah, that's a good point. I wonder how much. I think it's a call for maybe the whole nation as a whole. And it could be more for the leaders, because they're the priests and the leaders, the kings, like they're the ones leading the people. And hey,
where the leader goes, the people
go. Yeah. But yeah, I think this is just on anybody that kind of like what Jesus says. Anybody that has ears, let them hear. Anybody that this falls on, I think it's kind of the mixture. I think that we wrestle with sometimes, like the corporate message versus the personal, right? Where you individually have to make a decision for God, but there's also this corporate turning towards God as a church, as a community, that is required too.
I think it's easy enough, like, to understand the book, like, if you read it on your own. I think it's easy enough. And if it's easy for us now, like, thousands of years later, I can only imagine that it was easier for these people who actually understood everything that was being said. And could relate it to like their surroundings.
Right.
I like that you mentioned the story of Abraham, because even the whole Sodom and Gomorrah thing, one, I'm always thinking like, why didn't Abraham go down to 1? Why stop at 10? Right. But if he would have gone down to 1, would that have changed anything?
Right.
Because even like the way the story goes, it feels like God goes in there to save Lot for Abraham's sake.
Yeah.
Not because Lot chose to leave.
Yeah, that's true. I'm doing this as a favor for the faithfulness of Abraham. Yeah.
So I like the length that God is willing to go to save someone, right? It's just wow.
It's and looking and putting yourself in his shoes, it's so many of us would be like, I'm out. Like, this is not one time and that's it, right? It's kind of like that, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice. What does Bush say? A fool can't get fooled. A fool can't get fooled more. So,
I don't know what the saying is. I never get fooled.
Yeah. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me once, fool me twice, shame on me. Yeah. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. So great conversation. All right, so going into our lightning round here to end and finish up. Thoughts on Messi and PSG? We talked a little bit about it earlier. What are your thoughts? throughout this last week as we've seen him practice. Here we go again with the picture. Messi looks very happy.
Dude, I'm glad. I'm happy for him. I wasn't a fan of PSG. I was like, dang, dude, do you have
Yeah,
to go to that team?
yeah, yeah.
I never root for PSG. And well, now I'm gonna have to because of him.
Right.
But yeah, I think I would like to see him in the Premier League, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because that's like kind of what people are always like, oh no, the Premier League is like the
Yeah,
best
yeah.
league, and he wouldn't be able to cut it out there. Though he has beat like a bunch of English teams. But anyway, um,
Yeah,
I'm
he's
just happy
he's
that he's
dominating.
somewhere, and he acknowledges. He was like, listen, I was gonna go to the place that would be the best opportunity for me to win another Champions League.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I think like he chose correctly.
Yeah, yeah,
That is his best opportunity to win a Champions League. The
yeah,
team is stacked.
yeah. I
He's
mean,
gonna
left and
win a
right.
bunch of titles there in France, and then, in this next 2 years, he's probably gonna win like 10 titles.
Yeah.
You know,
Is I mean, I know he didn't have to do it. It's always that dialogue between kind of LeBron and Kobe, or Cristiano and Messi, which was like, can he win outside of the club? Sometimes people are like, they appreciate faithfulness to one club all your life, and then other times it's like, well, Cristiano shows that he can win in any league in multiple places, right? Obviously, a lot has to do with the organizations, right? Here, Messi was in a good spot for the better part of his career until the last couple of years, with the leadership being in a bad location. But I think, yeah, that'll also further put his legacy of just saying, hey, he can win anywhere. I know he didn't go to the Premier League, but even if he went there, he would have dominated too. So I'm excited for him. I'm excited. He looks very happy. If you look at his training videos, I was showing Chantal yesterday, and she's like, people always smile. He's like, nah, he's actually like, he's extra like happy. He's been wanting to play with Neymar. That's not a secret for the last couple of years. Neymar's been wanting to play with him too, and he's got some Argentinians there. I don't know about Icardi yet, because I know there were some issues there. But hey, I mean,
Messi doesn't really have issues with Icardi. I think that Messi just has issues with like
what
his
happened?
fame
Yeah.
as far as like being a ladies' man trying to
Mm-hmm.
like steal people's wives.
Mr. Steer girl. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, but I think Messi's happy.
Yeah.
He made the right choice. I would have loved to have seen him go last year.
Yep.
On his own terms.
To Man City or something. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it would have
I
been
think
interesting.
this just shows more of like how Barcelona just messed up, unfortunately. And as far as Messi and PSG, all the best, man.
Yeah,
Gonna go
yeah.
get myself a jersey.
Yep, agreed. Get a jersey. We're gonna see him hopefully soon play. So we're excited. All right,
Yeah.
next question here. Are you reading anything? What is a book you are reading right now?
So I'm reading Hosea.
Hey, okay, I like it. That works.
I'm messing around, dude. I've been trying to finish a few books, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I've opened up so many books and stuff.
Yeah.
And have read the opening chapters of many of them. I've read up to half of a lot of them, but I never
Okay.
get through it. Right now, I'm kind of excited because I'm waiting for Nanny to get back, and every Thursday we go and we
That's
read a
true.
book.
I love it. I love that. I love
And
that.
we've been reading Hive Mind,
Hide
and
mind.
it's been really good so far.
How do you spell
Before
that?
that,
Hide mind.
yeah, just hive like a
Oh,
beehive.
hive. Got it.
And then mind as in like mente. But yeah, lately I've honestly been looking through a curriculum that we're going to be doing for small groups, and that's why I've been reading, just to get the most out of it, because we're kind of using that for our entire youth ministry platform. So it's not just going to be small groups. We're going to be tackling the same thing, obviously, in a different ways when it comes to like vespers and
Yeah.
and discussions and things like that. We're gonna keep hitting it so that it's ingrained.
Good.
And the name of that book is, I think it's called Real, Not Superficial. It's like
Mm-hmm.
a book that was published like in 2015,
Got
2016,
it.
something like that. Um, and yeah, we're going through 30 weeks,
Wow.
chopped up in like 10 weeks. So 10
Yeah.
weeks this
Yeah.
year and then another 20 weeks next year, and just to get
Good.
us through the year. And so I've been looking through that book recently. Some good stuff. We always have to tailor those things to
Mm-hmm. To your
our own faith.
context. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, just that's pretty much it. That's
Nice,
what I've
bro.
been looking
I
at,
like that.
and
I'm
a
gonna
lot of
check that out.
podcasts.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna check that out. That hive mind sounds very interesting, man. I was just looking up the name. How your nation's IQ matters so much more than your own. Wow.
Yeah. So something that I've recently, heard and was in total
Mm-hmm.
agreement with
Mm-hmm.
is that uh, you know how sometimes we're in awe. We're like, oh, youth are leaving the church because they're
Mm-hmm.
not, centered in Jesus, or they don't
Mm-hmm.
have the correct teachings or the doctrines, or all this other stuff.
Yeah.
And what you soon realize when you read books like this, when you listen to different podcasts and what other professionals have to say about it,
Mm-hmm.
um, you accepting Jesus isn't going to keep you in the church or in
Yeah.
Christianity, you
Yeah.
know, or an Adventist. I think at the end of the day, and everything will back this up. Any kind of study
Mm-hmm.
will back this. Is that community will triumph personal decision every day.
Mm.
So if you make a decision for Jesus and you're like, yeah, I accept Jesus as my Lord and Savior, you get baptized at church, but you
Mm-hmm.
go to school and all your friends are, doing whatever, chances are you are going to just go and do whatever with your friends,
Yeah.
even though personally you've decided to follow Jesus.
Hmm.
And that's why community is so important in the church setting, because that's what's gonna keep you. So a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people are like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, so and so is now like a party girl, or like a party boy, whatever you want to call them, the different terms. And it's not because they're not, centered in scripture. It's
Mm-hmm.
not because they don't
Mm-hmm.
know their Bible. It's not because they don't love Jesus,
Right.
but it's because they don't have community. They're
Mm-hmm.
lonely,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, books like Hive Mind really, highlight that, um, your group, your wherever it is that you find community, um,
Mm-hmm.
that that hive will end up making many of the decisions for you,
Wow.
even though your personal decision might be like, no, I want to follow Jesus, or no, I want to do
Mm-hmm.
this. Yeah.
Yeah. Dude, I like that. I'm gonna check that out. Beehive or Hive Mind. Beehive. Hive
It,
Mind. Hive
it,
Mind.
it does come from that, but yeah.
But just how that community, right? Yeah, yeah. That's super powerful, man. I've been reading a couple of books. I'm reading The Deeply Formed Life by Rich
Oh, cool.
Villodas, which is really good. I did a sermon series on that, and I'm rereading it now, so I'm excited for that. I was kind of had the opportunity to. I preached 4 Sabbaths in a row, bro. I know it's normal for some
Nice.
pastors, but yeah. And then I'm reading also from Heather Thompson Day. It's Not Your Turn.
Oh, that's the one that we could buy it ourselves, and then
Yeah. And do that. So it's pretty good. It's pretty good. She talks about her own journey and rise to the top, and just how like there's different seasons of life, and sometimes it's not your turn. And so it's like it's kind of the idea, right? What you become in the journey is more important than your destination. And so she really talks about that, and articles and statistics and research that's done, and in terms of the power of thoughts and minds and all that, and your mind and that. So that's been 2 of the books. I'm reading another one too, but yeah, those are the 2 that really have been really great, and I appreciate a lot. But I'm gonna look into that Hive Mind, man. I think that's very important in terms of how we do things in that community, right? What is being shared with us in the communities that we trust, and how we continue in that. And that leads us to our last part, right? Florida and COVID. For those of you that don't know, Florida is like, I don't know if Texas, I know Texas and Florida, but Florida is just is bad. And then our governor, to say the least, is just it's not doing a good job of just being able to maintain this. They're kind of living as if it's not really as bad as it is. I mean, to the fact of, if you're not aware, there was, I don't know if they passed it, but they were going to take scholarship money or federal money, state money from schools that mandated mask wearing in schools, right? To really just say, hey, don't force masks.
Yeah.
And it's just crazy that you would, yeah.
So I think of,
Crazy.
I think of DeSantis when I read this, pains as of a woman in childbirth come to him, but he's like a child without wisdom.
Oh
When the
my
time
God.
arrives, he doesn't have the sense to come out of the womb,
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I'm messing around. But honestly, you say COVID and Florida's gonna be like, what's COVID?
Yeah.
You know?
Who?
What?
Yeah.
People are dying of COVID. It's sad.
It is very sad, bro.
Because we have like zero grip on what's happening, and our leadership isn't helping with that at all. So, to each his own, but you put other people's lives at risk when you don't take the responsibility upon yourself to be well informed, and actually, do what the specialists and experts say that you should be doing when it comes to a worldwide pandemic. It's sad to see how a lot of the vaccines are expiring, while other countries still haven't gotten like a
That's
first
true.
doses.
That's a good point too.
It shows, I guess, one, the greed of our country. And yeah, man, Florida and COVID, it's bad. It's bad down here, especially
It's bad.
Miami.
It's hot.
Especially Miami.
It's hot.
Um,
And especially now that we're, this was probably the first week of school for some schools. And I was just reading right now, there's some teachers, 4 or 6 teachers died a couple of days ago. So you're thinking like, I just feel bad. We have a couple of teachers at work, at school, at church, and, people that and just having to deal with all that, and the parents, and then you trying to keep your own health. Man, it's stressful as pastors, and we primarily have to deal with one day a week, right, with the church service and then what happens at that church service for those couple of hours. But for a teacher to have to deal with that 8, 9, 10 hours a day, 5 days a week, on top of teaching and lesson planning and grading, oh man, it's a lot. It's a lot. So yeah, prayers for Florida. As Brian said, our leadership acts like the people that Hosea is speaking up against. And it just leaves you really like, how is this possible, man? And that's what's kind of crazy in this cycle, right? Of just what I've seen is just, a lot of people in power, whether governors, Congress, state officials and federal officials, whatever, they say things that they think will get them reelected or liked by the people, right? And then the people on the ground listen to that, and they're like, all right, as the leader goes, so we're going to go. But then it's a cycle, because they begin to do that, and then the leaders look down and, okay, what do the people want? Oh, they're saying this. Okay, so if I want to get reelected, I got to do this. And it's a cycle where they influence themselves, and nobody's really leading anyone, because, I need to say what's going to keep me in office. And then the people are like, well, this is what the person in office is saying. And it's just back and forth. So it's sad. And what hurts me most, and I think it's kind of like the pain God has, is how like misinformation is differently killing people. Here in Florida, I think we're at 98% of like COVID cases, hospitalizations are unvaccinated individuals. And I know vaccines have been a hot topic for a while, but now more, it's just the misinformation around it, around the conversation, is literally killing people. And when you get to the hospital, many people, I've talked to some doctors here, they're like,
they're all full again.
They're full again. Yeah, they're overwhelming. They're getting nursing homes. They're having to get other locations to house COVID patients because there's just no staff. There's no room. But not just that, but when the patients get there, they're like, I wish I would have gotten my vaccine. I wish I would have done something instead. And at that point, it's too late. So it's just heartbreaking to see what's happening here.
Listen, man. I know that France is always kind of like, at least in history, needed the U.S. help, but I think that at this time, like, except for like the revolution and stuff, they helped with that. But at this time, like for France, like their government basically said, yeah, you want to go to bars and
Yeah.
restaurants and to
Yeah.
places, you need to show your vaccine card. You need to get vaccinated. You don't want to go to these bars? That's cool. You don't have to. You don't have to get vaccinated. But if you're gonna go, you need a vaccine. So
Right.
like, I'm tired, man, of hearing people, oh, how are they gonna impose that on me? It's like, I don't know, man. Like, people just wanna. Anyway, that's another topic. But yeah, Florida and COVID, we are messed up. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, we are next up. So I know it's a salty way to end this, but hey, salty life, man. So Florida,
All life, yeah.
salt life, man. Yeah, man, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Oh man, but yeah, man, it's been crazy. But we keep pressing on. We're trying to get people
Wear your mask.
wear your mask. At least wear your mask. Wear your mask. Stay your distance. Be mindful. Be careful. Make wise decisions, and that's all we can ask. And if you feel comfortable, get vaccinated. A lot of evidence and statistics, if you really see the research, is what has been good. There's been no. They say that a lot of people are worried for the long-term effects or side effects or detriment, but usually you see those early on in the first couple of months, and we haven't seen that. So
I have no side effects. I've got a couple more, gray, white hairs on my beard, but that's not because of the vaccine.
Yeah, that's not the vaccine, I would say. And you for sure know that there's more. The side effects for COVID are greater, life and death, compared to having the vaccine. So,
yeah.
But to each his own. But yeah, all right, y'all. Well, have a great weekend, and I hope that you at least take the idea that God is still compassionate with us and patient with us at all times, even in our foolishness. So,
for sure.
Yeah. See y'all later.